Hello, and welcome to Alive or Just Blethering, a podcast where two 30-somethings discuss the music we found and loved growing up. My name is Keith McLeod, and with me is my fellow host, Chris Lavender. Today on Alive or Just Blethering, we'll be talking the All-Star Sessions, Roadrunner United.
Good day to you, Keith. How are you today?
I'm pumped, man. I'm actually quite pumped.
Oh, good. Is this one you've been looking forward to discussing, is it?
Well, let's just say at the end of last week's episode, I was a bit hesitant. I was a bit like, oh no, what have I done to myself? We kind of need to cover this. I do remember this being quite influential on me. And I suppose, we talked about Trivium. I love Trivium. We talked about Bullet for My Valentine. They have nothing to do with this. They're nowhere near this record. But, it just sort of did remind me of some sort of cringier moments from circa 2005, 2006, where I was a bit like, oh no, how's this going to age? And, yeah, I think I think we'll get into the juicy bits, but I think it's done all right over its 17 years.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you're new to the podcast, thank you for checking us out. If you come back, it's great to have you back. So, All-Star Sessions, Roadrunner United. I remember this being an event. Like, it was so much hype in it being released. You've got the team captains got announced, and the names on this album are huge. Like some really huge names from Fear Factory through to, the old school, old guard, Dino Cazares from Fear Factory. Is he Fear Factory? And then the new school of Matt Heafy from Trivium, who was at this time in 2005 the golden child, the poster child of.
He was 19 years old.
That's mental.
Doing this album. That's insane. Yeah, you're right. And to round it off, we had Jordison from Slipknot and we had Rob Flynn from Machine Head. In total, there was 57 artists contributing to this record.
Wow.
45 past and present Roadrunner bands. Of course, you've got Slipknot, Machine Head, Fear Factory, and the Golden Boys at the time, Trivium, helming the project. And yeah, I remember the hype for this as well. We've already talked about Trivium. We've got something lining up for Slipknot. I was definitely listening to Machine Head at this time. The only band I probably wasn't listening to was Fear Factory. So I knew Fear Factory. I think everyone knows Lynchpin. Lynchpin's one of those Kerrang songs in the UK. And I didn't really know Dino Cazares, but yeah, I was pretty excited about this coming out. What about you at the time? How did you feel about this at the time?
So this was one of these ones that I was on the Trivium forums at the time, and this was
heckling the band.
This was before the heckles. This is when I was just into the band. I was just into Trivium, and this got brought up on an almost daily basis because it was Matt was obviously at the helm of it. He was being brought up anytime a snippet from the studio was getting released. This was being watched over on a day by day, blow by blow basis, and it was just there was a lot of excitement for it. People just didn't know what to expect, and in hindsight, I can't think of anything outside of supergroups. I know we've had this discussion with supergroups with the Audio Slave episode, but outside of supergroups, I don't feel like there's ever been such a collaborative album I can think of.
It's certainly what they present in the promotional materials as well. I watched the hour-long documentary that came with the CD that's currently on YouTube, and yeah, they very much push that no one's done this before. I don't think anyone's done it since, because I don't know how you can. You would just be compared to this constantly. You've got, so first of all, we should probably announce it's the CD was put together to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Roadrunner Records. They wanted to mark the anniversary. They wanted to do something. It's explained in the documentary. The idea came around to do a collaborative single, just let's get a couple of, we've got this label of all these amazing musicians. Surely we can pull a song out our ass. And it was actually the brainchild of Roadrunner UK general manager Mark Palmer and Roadrunner USA VP of A&R Monty Connor. Monty Connor is the one that sort of presents it on the documentary, and he sort of pitches the idea to it and stuff like that. And he's like, well, surely we can do a bit more than a single. Then the idea of an album comes along, the idea of captains comes along, and it goes from there. So they're very proud of the fact that nothing's really been done like this before, and I don't think much has been done like this since, to be fair.
There's a few names on it as well that I hadn't really appreciated at the time who were involved, and we're going to talk about the tracks. One of them still surprised me to this day, but Junkie XL on keyboards.
Yeah, no, I was really surprised by that as well.
I know it was only one track, but it was just one of those names that I just did not expect to see Tom Holkenborg being involved in. It just two totally different worlds in my view. But you also had Daryl Plumbo on the vocals on one of them. Completely forgot about that.
Yeah, and I think he's there because it was Head Automaticos on Roadrunner, weren't they?
I would be lying if I know they were on.
I don't think it was Glassjaw. I don't think Glassjaw were ever on Roadrunner. I think he was there for Head Automatica. I might be wrong.
Glassjaw have got Roadrunner in their labels on their Wikipedia page, so I assume it was.
Alright, maybe I'm just talking shit.
But again, he's got such a unique vocal style that the minute he started singing, I was like, that's Daryl fucking Plumbo.
Yeah, I'm talking absolute nonsense, because Head Automatica are only credited as having Warner Brothers as their label. So yeah, I thought it was the other way around. I didn't realize Glassjaw were part of Roadrunner.
Some of the singer names, because obviously we can talk about this about bands, about who's playing the guitars, who's playing the drums, but really it's the singer that's gonna make a track sound sort of memorable, or it's going to have that singer's voice is going to be unique. So
yeah,
the second Howard Jones kicks in on track 1, when Daryl Plumbo on track 10, Max Cavalera, and then the final track, Peter Steele from Type O Negative, like,
yeah,
it is a proper who's who of mid 2000s metal. It's amazing.
So before we get into the sort of the nitty gritty of the songs and stuff like that, did you enjoy this at the time of release, and what do you think about it coming back to it now?
I remember hearing it for the first time in 2005 and being underwhelmed.
Okay.
I've gone back to it this week. I managed to listen to it once, and it was a struggle. I feel it is flawed in its ambition.
Wow.
There are moments. There are a couple of tracks on it that I'm like, oh, I will listen to that track again. There are parts of songs that are good, but I feel it feels a bit rushed.
Okay.
The best, I think the way I described it to you was, it feels like a compilation album, because of every song has a different singer, different style, written by different people, produced by different people. It doesn't quite gel. And you listening to the tracks, if you're listening to it track by track, you can have it on shuffle. It makes no difference, because none of the tracks sit nicely next to each other, I don't think.
I mean, it is a compilation album. Well,
it isn't, because these aren't songs from other releases that have been brought in. It's just a mismatch of artists.
Yeah, they're not songs that have been brought in from the same artist, like a greatest hits. You're right, but it's still a compilation in the sense that each song is intentionally different. Each song features different people on it, and each song like it's not a compilation in the sense of this is one band's greatest hits. It's a compilation in the sense of Now 65 is a compilation album. You know, your dad's Ultimate Rock 5 is still a compilation album.
I disagree only because, you know, those tracks exist elsewhere, and there are full albums, and there are album versions and radio edit versions. These songs exist purely on this album as an All-Star Sessions release. They don't exist elsewhere. So that
it's even in the name, All-Star Sessions. It's not one outing of one band with one producer, or you know, pulling in from different albums. It is a mix intentionally to celebrate 25 years of this record label.
So that is my first issue is the album itself, and I feel like each song it doesn't sound like a demo. I want to be absolutely clear. I think it is very well recorded and presented, but the songs they feel like demos in a sense that you would bring it into a practice room and then it would be fine-tuned later down the line. So they might have a second, you replay the second verse or do something different. The way that the songs themselves are structured, they feel like they've not had very good oversight by one sort of, like, I know they had captains, but it just feels like they weren't like chopped down. I think some of the songs are too long. I can't remember one of the songs early on. Is it Annihilation in the Hands of God?
Mm-hmm.
God, that goes on for at least 2 minutes too long. It's one of the longest tracks on no, it's not the longest track on the album. But then there's the other one, The Rich Man. Again, they just could have been leaner and more punchy. And that's where I struggled with a lot of these songs, was just getting through them was a task.
I don't think the idea of bringing in 57 musicians to write an 18-track album to celebrate 25 years of a record label, I don't think the objective was to be lean. was to be like, it's a wank fest. Like, it's an absolute flex and a wank fest, but that's on purpose. That's intentional.
Probably 18 tracks, too many. They could have, I don't understand, from a marketing perspective, they could have split, maybe not split it down the middle, but they could have released this as like a volume 1, volume 2 sort of event and had 12 tracks on each one. It still would have been. I
don't disagree with that. Yeah.
Still would have been a full price release, and you know, they would have had more out there, and it would have been nice, I think, to have made it a thing. If they were to do more of them, and I feel like there's a lot of missed potential in it, but I really, really struggled getting through this, and I really did.
Wow, holy fuck. Okay, I didn't. I totally fell in love with this album all over again.
Good for you. I'm pleased for you. I
really am. You sound jaded. You actually sound like, oh man, this is such a struggle. Like, this could have been less. And why is there a 5-minute song on this? And like, you know, like I said at the top, I was initially concerned that, you know, the glaze, the rose tinted glasses of 2005 were firmly set on this album. But
I said already, I didn't have that. I remember being underwhelmed the first time I heard it. It left no impression whatsoever. Like, I've gone back to listening to this, and it may as well have been that I'd never heard it in my life.
First time, when this first came out, I was like yourself, sort of seeing the hype about it, and I was pumped when this first came out. Like, I sort of loved it. It sort of had everything I wanted about it. It started off with a Howard Jones song. Later on, there's a Jesse Leach song. So like, there was a Killswitch Engage element there for me. what I remember loving about the album when it first came out was like how it was exposing me to like different artists and different vocalists and stuff. Like I don't really think I'd heard that really sort of death metal-y guttural
It was like Glenn Benton.
Yeah, I don't think I'd really heard like the guttural sound of Glenn Benton before. Not really. Not that I'd heard it and been like, oh, I don't like that. I'm gonna, I'm too much into my Trivium and my Bullet for My Valentine right now, so I'm gonna avoid that. But having that song there made me listen to that guy. There's so much on it that it's just sort of exposed me to. Like, I was probably more of a Head Automatica fan than I was a Glassjaw fan. But here's another example of Daryl Plumbo that I was like, this is fucking cool. Was never really a Sepultura fan, but here's a Max Cavalera song. Like, that sort of stuff. And like, that's even the vocalist I'm aware of. I don't really know who Kyle Thomas is. I don't really know who Tim Williams is. Like, but they've got great songs on this. And I just remember being into that. And maybe I bought into it a little bit. Maybe I bought into the whole Roadrunner hype thing. Fair enough, I'll accept that. But in coming back to it, I'm like, nah, I think this still slaps. I think this still has a lot of weight. I think this still has... I don't know whether... Maybe it's... We were talking about it before we started recording. I think it's... To say that I've bought back into it, I think it's to say that, like, I get what they were trying... Or I appreciate what they were trying to do. And that's not just sell records. Like, from a Roadrunner perspective of a business, they're obviously pulling this whole thing together to make money at the end of the day. That's fair enough. But you watch the documentary and like I was laughing at it because it just reminded me of like when the fucking shitty little bands that I've been in over the years, and you're trying to teach each other the music.
Yeah.
And you're just like walking each other through the riffs. You're just like on the fretboard, all got a 2, open 2, like 4, whatever. And like Dino Cazares is doing that to like some other dude. You see that very early on in the thing, and I'm just like, these guys aren't writing down sheet music and notation and working off of it like that. They're just it just reminded me of what it was to be in the studio again, or in a practice room, not studio, in a practice room, and just be like, fucking hell, this was kind of how we did it. This was how we wrote music back in the day. So I was able to relate to that and just love it again. I was like, these are just... Take out the money factor, because I don't even know how much money you're going to make. Like, how do you split the royalties on this when there's 57 people on it?
That's a good question. I never even thought about the money side of things from this. I'm guessing that your Andy Sneeps and maybe the captains took a larger proportion. I know that in many things it's like there's royalties for lyrics and there's royalties for music.
Yeah,
like there's two separate streams there. So maybe the 18 vocalists take a bit. I had no idea how that would have worked, and what kind of sales did it see? Like, did it do well?
The only sort of information I've got is off of the Wikipedia, and 2005 its chart positions were in the UK album charts 45, so it didn't make it top 40 in the UK albums. US Billboard 77 and Australia 45. So not smashing the top 10 in those countries, but it doesn't. There's not really much information.
What did it get any single releases?
Well, that's the single they released to sell the album, I think, is one of the weaker songs on the album, and it's The End. It's the song that's actually, the vocals are by Matt Heafy, but it's Dino Cazares' song.
Okay.
So, and the video is not great. With all respect to Matt Heafy, I don't think he knows what to do with a microphone when he's not got a guitar in his hand.
Well, he didn't when he was 19 anyway.
But he didn't, and again, he was 19 doing this, so he had the weight of 25 years of Roadrunner on his 19-year-old shoulders, and I think for the most part he smashed it out of the park. But yeah, like it just looks a bit weird seeing him not have a guitar and sing with this, and he's holding the mic in a weird way. But yeah, it's just a bit of a performance piece. The band seem to be imposed on sort of some LA streets, and there's thunder and lightning and blah blah blah. So yeah. But to come back to what I was trying to say about like royalties and stuff like that, like I'm just trying not to buy into like the Roadrunner shit. Like I'm trying to remove the label from this and take this as like the culmination of 25 years of music, 57 artists, 45 bands, like, and these guys just came together to write these songs. It's like one of the things Dino Cazares talks a lot about is like the camaraderie of all of it. Like there wasn't any ego, there wasn't any sort of, well, apparently there wasn't any ego, there wasn't any sort of bullshit. It was just, hey, let's do this pretty.
No ego, but here's a 5-minute wank fest.
There was no ego from the musicians, potentially, but you know, let's just come together. Let's just have a jam. Let's just have a bit of a laugh, and let's just pull this thing together and see what we come up with. You know, let's take the drummer from Chimera. Let's take the bloody. I'm gonna lose myself in how many people there are on this band, or these bands, and let's make something of that. And I'm just into that. I'm just with it. Again, if it wasn't for all the promotional material and shit that I've soaked up trying to get into this, yeah, maybe I wouldn't be as hyped with it. There's definitely some songs on this that I don't really care for. You know, I don't love all 18. I definitely decide to skip a few just to try and get through a few more listens. But for the most part, I very much enjoy about 75 to 80% of this album.
Okay. What are your standout tracks? If you were gonna make a playlist of the tracks and you're just gonna want to pick 5 of them, which is the ones you're keeping?
Straight out the gate, The Dagger and The Enemy. I mean, weird to put 2 songs with the at the very beginning, but The Dagger and The Enemy, track 1 and track 2, you've got Rob Flynn's band, Howard Jones on vocals, and you've got is The Dagger, and The Enemy is Dino Cazares and Mark Hunter from Chimera on the vocals there. Those 2 songs are just fucking out the gate. Like, they're just tremendous. Like, proper to what I would enjoy. Just like really, really good metalcore.
Okay.
Less these days. I probably wouldn't have minded so much then, but these days I'm a little miffed at how much Rob Flynn is on The Dagger. I get he's a vocalist as well, so I would say he has a place as a vocalist on this album, sure. But when you've got Howard Jones, why the fuck do you need Rob Flynn?
Good point. I must say, I'm just looking through the names, and there's a name that is absolutely missing throughout the whole personnel of this album. If there was one person who I think should have been involved in it, and he's not, I'm actually a bit surprised.
Talk to me.
Who do you think? Have a guess. Who do you think I'm talking about? With Howard Jones, got Mike D'Antonio.
Oh, Adam D.
Adam D.
Maybe this was his back surgery?
What, 2005? I don't know, but I mean, he was working on other things in 2005. I'm guessing maybe it was a scheduling thing. Maybe he just didn't want to muddy the waters, given that he was a very well-respected producer. But I just feel like he's, you know, all the rest of his band's basically here.
Well, they did ask Rob Flynn multiple times, and he said no. He didn't want to do it initially.
Okay.
So maybe Adam D was the same. Maybe he was like, nah, I've got too much shit on. Maybe that I'm just doing other things. Other standout songs for me, track 11, Baptized in the Redemption, Des Ferreira, another Cazares song. That song is fucking out there. It totally... I knew Cold Chamber, and I knew... What's Des Ferreira's other band? Sorry, I'm totally pronouncing
Devil Driver.
Fafara? Des Fafara.
You're thinking of Devil Driver as well.
Yeah. Devil Driver. I was never a Devil Driver fan. I was never a Cold Chamber fan. I knew of these bands, but track 11, Baptized in the Redemption, brought that guy to my forefront, and I was like, holy shit, he is one of the best metal vocalists I think I've ever heard. Another one that Blood and Flames, Jesse Leach and Matt Heafy, track 15, I Don't Want to Be a Superhero with Michael Graves.
Cracking.
And another Heafy song. Like,
That's a good song. I like that
song.
one. I do like that song because it's just a good pop punk banger, that one.
And even track 18, Enemy of the State, is... I've recently found out in reading for this that it's a made-up language. Don't try and make sense of it. Peter Steele just made noises.
Peter Steele is an incredible vocalist.
So good. And the whole song, to be so slow and heavy, you know, it's a complete departure from anything else on the album other than what you would maybe say is Rhodes, the Michael Ackerfeld and Josh Silver acoustic song. You know, it's that song. One thing that always caught me about track 18, Enemy of the State, is Steve Holt from 36 Crazy Fists is on that song.
Yeah, he's a guitarist, isn't he? Yeah.
He's one of the guitarists on the song, and it just doesn't fit what you imagine 36 Crazy Fists released that song. You'd lose your shit. You'd be like, this isn't a Crazy Fist tune. But Steve Holt's there. There's an amazing bass chorus on that. It's got probably one of the best bass tones on the album. That's just some of the ones that immediately come to mind where I'm like, fuck yeah, that's cool, man. I'm down for that.
I will say, and this is all credit, no doubt, because it is a Roadrunner release, so they obviously had the money to put behind it, and you've got an incredible amount of talent involved in the album, that it is very, very well recorded. Mm-hmm. All the songs sound good.
Yep.
Like there's never a moment where I'm like, those vocals are a little too far forward or too far back, or the bass is just a really well balanced, well mixed album.
Yeah.
And I think that credit mostly comes to Andy Sneap, who we've mentioned his name 100 times on this podcast because he is just so. He's got his fingers in so many pies in the music engineering department of metal. It's impossible to escape him, and he.
Oh yeah, we did cover Andy Sneap before. We also covered Colin Richardson. Most recently, he did "Bullet for My Valentine."
Yeah, and sort of Sneap did the production and mastering. So he's a very, and he did it on Ascendancy too. So he's clearly well connected with it all. So he's done his work, getting this ready. Who else is on it? You say Colin as well. So yeah, there's all the right names, and it pains me to say it that it's just a difficult listen, because I just feel like it's bloated and a bit directionless in other areas that I'm like, just make a compilation album. Just make a normal compilation album. Just literally go through every one of these bands, every one of these artists, and pick one song from one of their albums released in the last 25 years. And I would love to have just have a Roadrunner, was it 25 years? Mm-hmm. 20 years. 25 years of songs in order and just have one by one, and you could probably end it on like a track from Ascendancy or something like that.
Right. What in 2005? What stopped you from doing that?
What do you mean? Spotify didn't exist.
No, but you had access to the songs. You could have made a playlist. You could have burnt a CD. You could have burnt a mini disc.
Yeah, but when someone crafts a compilation, you are making a playlist, and it's always nice that they could have also thrown in a load of demos that were previously unreleased material. That's what I prefer. And I get that you love this album, and I'm not gonna take that away from you. I think that's absolutely fine. I just feel like it was a bit of a back-patting exercise for a lot of these musicians.
I can see why you get that, and if you watch the documentary, ignore the first 5 minutes and ignore the last 5 minutes. That's when Monty Connor is sort of introducing the concept of the album, and he's sort of, he does the outro on the doco as well, and like he's definitely the salesman for it, and obviously he's A&R, he's the guy definitely trying to push it. He's the guy that's like, for the last 25 years, when metal wasn't cool, we released metal. When metal was cool, we released metal. Like, he's the guy that is selling Roadrunner and is selling, like, how amazing this achievement is. And there's a few cuts from individual musicians, specifically towards the end, where they're just like, yeah, if it wasn't for Roadrunner, we wouldn't be here, and we wanted to, when we were kids coming up, we wanted to sign to Roadrunner because Roadrunner were the metal label, etc. There is a lot of, shall we say, dick sucking on Roadrunner, and that's what this entire project is, absolutely. But if you take that away, I think what you have, logistically, is a pretty amazing achievement, that you've got 18 songs from all these different artists. And I think, for the most part, they're all good. Some of the songs I don't like because I'm not a fan of the vocals.
Yeah.
But musically, they're tremendous.
Yeah.
They shred. Like, musically, I enjoy them because, strangely, in the documentary, the vocalists are not really part of it. You see Howard Jones. You see Mark Hunter. Do you see anyone else? Maybe there's a couple of other vocalists, but for the most part, it's about the captains. It's about an hour long. There's about 20 minutes each per captain, and it just goes over some of their songs.
Okay.
The vocalists are almost nowhere to be seen.
Fair enough.
Which I found interesting because, like you're saying, Matt Heafy was the kind of the golden child of this. He's the only captain to feature on another song. And that's another thing. He does backing vocals on Jesse Leach's song. So, two songs that have mostly prolific backing vocals are the two fucking Killswitch vocalists. Anyway, that's probably nothing. Yeah, I just think when you take the achievement of this, that whether there was or wasn't egos, I don't know, but we weren't there during the recording. But they've managed to knock out the park, I would say, for the most part, 18 pretty good songs in the space of about 3-4 weeks. From what I've gathered, from what I've read, from what the doco sort of release or sort of said, they did most of this stuff within 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
So, sure, maybe your comment about how it just sort of sounds like demos all sounds a bit rushed. Maybe they could have had a year to do this. But, I mean, how long's a piece of string? How long do you do this stuff for?
I think that the time constraints likely shows. I feel like a lot of the songs are a bit bloated. They could be fine-tuned to be a bit more catchy, perhaps, and maybe have a bit of a better hook for me. But I just, like I say, I walked away from this album 2005 thinking, well, there was a thing. I never really absorbed it in, and I've listened to it this week once, and I've said once, I didn't have any impetus to go back to this. Not one.
I listened to this album about 5 or 6 times.
Goodness me, and it's far too long. So good on you.
It was good. Like, honestly, just even from the start, from like the dagger, that, and I mentioned this at the end of last week's episode, that pick slide in, Howard Jones screaming, and you're just, let's go. Like, that's some really good stuff. What are the songs that you didn't really get into? I'm assuming your list is going to be longer than mine.
Well, the ones that stood out as not my style. So, In the Fire with King Diamond on vocals. The minute King Diamond starts singing, I just want to skip straight away. He's not my style. Annihilation by the Hands of God. I like black metal. This is death metal, isn't it? Yes, this is the death metal song.
Okay.
And I just feel like it's not for me. I'm not a fan of Cannibal Corpse, and it's got that Cannibal Corpse sound. It was at the vocalist from Deicide, and the guitar, and it's written by Rob Barrett as well with Joey Jordison. So that's not my thing. The song with the singer from El Nino on, what was that one again?
No Mass Control,
yep,
track 17.
Fucking skip. And I didn't really care for the song with Danny Filth on it either. I don't know. I kind of like some Cradle of Filth, but it's literally maybe one song, maybe it's just her Ghost in the Fog. But again, I don't really care for Danny Filth's vocals. Not something I'm into. There were some standout ones. I want to be clear that there are a couple of songs on here that I think are great songs that I will. The Dara Palumbo song "No Way Out." That has been liked, and I will be putting that on playlists from now on.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoyed that song. Completely forgot it existed. So to hear it was so refreshing. There's the Corey Taylor song, "The Rich Man." Not so keen on the overdubbed CNN and NPR sort of stuff. It was 2005. There's a war going on in Iraq, so it's very topical for the time. I like Corey's vocals on that. It reminds me of early Slipknot. He's got a real like strain in it, but it works. Reminds me very much of like Volume 3 Slipknot.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that one. And independent Voice of the Voiceless. Love Max Cavalera's vocals. Always have. Always enjoyed his vocals, whether it was in Soulfly or in Sepultura. So having basically Cavalera song on there was great. So independent Voice of the Voiceless, Rich Man, No Way Out. They were great songs, and I will likely listen to those songs independently in the future.
And what, everything else can get in the bin?
Adjacent to the bin, yeah.
So in a pile
In
next to it.
the recycling
you'll
pile.
check it.
You know, like
got
like the
breaks
the bottles.
my heart, man.
I just could not dig it. And maybe it and
What about the dagger? That opening song, Howard Jones. What about the dagger?
You know what? Maybe this. I'm gonna borrow one of your lines from when I've brought albums on that you've not really enjoyed. I just wasn't in the right headspace for this album this week.
Wow. Okay.
And it depends when you get a good song, like I say, No Way Out. Oh, Chef's Kiss. Love that song. That's what I wanted to listen to this week. Was that kind of music. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a superhero because it's just got this really like upbeat, sort of Descendants-esque vibe to it, which
a bit more of a punk tune, isn't it? Yeah,
really love that. But the rest of it's just generic as fuck, mate.
Right, my list of songs that I didn't like is very well, apart from the majority of the ones you didn't, but the ones that you sort of highlighted as not liking, very similar to me. Didn't really care for Annihilation by the Hands of God. Again, came down to the vocals. Glenn Barton might be an absolute god in death metal scenes, but I'm not a particularly death metal fan, so I didn't really enjoy it. Same with In the Fire. I can take or leave In the Fire. On the right day, I'll enjoy it, but for the most part, I kind of don't really care for this sort of flamboyant camp, extravagant vocals of King Diamond either. It wasn't really one I was bothered about. I thought the riff was pretty cool. I thought the song itself was fun, but King Diamond himself didn't really care for. I didn't like independent Voice of the Voiceless, more so because I'm not a Max Cavalera fan. I've never been into Soulfly. I've never been into Sepultura. Just something I didn't really care for. But the song I thought was awesome because by the end of it, you've got like the harmony. It's got that sort of drawn out outro. I thought that was cool as fuck. Just take Max Cavalera off of that song and I'm probably going to really, really like it. Yep. Dawn of the Golden Age, Danny Filth, get that in the fucking bin. Just can't be fucked with that at all. I don't care about Cradle of Filth. I've never liked Cradle of Filth. Again, that sort of the darker, blacker metal things, like I'm just not giving a shit about. And no, I think for the rest of it, it's pretty good. Okay. Pretty awesome.
I'm pleased for you.
Even No Mass Control, the Christian Machado single, I sort of just liked it for what it was. I just thought, this was
I never liked El Nino. I never liked El Nino.
No, neither did I. But do you know what? The drummer from El Nino, Dave Chiavari, he's on tracks 4 and 15. He worked a lot with Heafy. So he's on track 4, which in the Fire, we both said we didn't like. Track 15, I Don't Want to Be a Superhero. That's the El Nino drummer on that.
Yeah, there's talent. There's so much talent on the album, and it obviously, I mean, like I say, you got Junkie XL. Totally, I said that early on. Just there's a man who writes soundtracks with Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, but how many soundtracks has he written with Hans Zimmer?
Like Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Mad Max Fury Road, Deadpool, Tomb Raider, Sonic the Hedgehog, Godzilla vs King Kong, Army of the Dead.
All right, I might take that back. He's clearly done a hell of a lot.
But he's not someone I would have ever attached to a metal album.
He's only on one song. And
he's on
how
only
he's
one
on
song.
that song, I've no idea. So, I suppose that's just kind of where I stand on the album itself. Like, it, especially watching documentaries, obviously put me back in this headspace of being in a band, being in a practice studio, like having that camaraderie, jamming it with your friends, you know, achieving something like writing a new song and performing in it and enjoying it and, you know, appreciating the work that you've done and stuff like that. And I just sort of seen that in this album, that these guys came together and, you know, a bit like what is the modern day MCU. Who knew that 10 years worth of movies and 21 movies later, you would have a consistent story, well, mostly consistent storyline that made sense that everyone absolutely fucking loved. Like, it's a bit like that, in my view.
You've just compared... No. Sorry.
There's so much about this that could not have worked, that could have been absolute garbage, that could have just been people... This might never have ever been released. It could have just been people falling out. It could have been egos. It could have just been absolute dog shit. But I think, for the most part, it all works. And that's an achievement.
I'll take your word for it.
Right, you were going to say no. I'm sorry. What is because
you
another point?
Sorry, you're trying to. I don't get how that's got anything to do with MCU. Sorry.
Something you were saying about how this all sounds random, like you don't know how this all makes sense. It's a bit out of place. It could be on shuffle, etc. Yet you're then praising it for all being mixed by Colin Richards and Andy Sneap. And on top of that, one thing I didn't say. It
sounds good. I'm just saying it sonically sounds good.
You've also got... Each captain seems to have had their own engineer. So Jason Sukoff, who did Ascendancy, is on all the Trivium... is on all the Matt Heafy tracks.
Right, okay.
So...
It's well engineered. Right? But the point is that it's like a Kerrang compilation album of songs I didn't want. It's... You know, when you had your Kerrang Volume 2, you know, every track is just another track. And it just doesn't flow for me. It was a difficult listen. I think it's the nature of it. It lends to it. So, yeah, I've said my piece. I don't want to shit on your parade here. I just feel like it's not an album that I'm gonna go back to. I'm sorry.
Are you trying to say, Keith, leave it there? I'm not gonna jump on this bandwagon with you. This is not one you're not changing my mind on this.
You've not won me over on this one. I'm sorry.
Oh, disappointing. One thing that they also did was they did do a concert.
I did see this, but it never got released on DVD anyway until 2008. But it took place in 2005.
Yep, December 15th, 2005 in New York, the Nokia Theatre in New York City. And this just sort of sums up the whole thing for me. I don't believe that this gig worked, because it's not... They only play 4 songs off of Roadrunner United, and the rest of it is essentially a covers night, where you've got the core band who performed the majority of songs was Dino Cazares, Adam Duce, Paul Gray, Joey Jordison, Andreas Kisser, and Roy Mayogra.
Mm-hmm.
He drums a lot on Dino's songs. And, like, so for example, My Last Serenade, Killswitch Engage was played. You've got Howard and Jesse, Joel, Andreas Kisser, Mike D, and Justin Foley. So Adam D didn't even perform with most of Killswitch Engage on that night. Slipknot Surfacing was played by Rob Flynn. Yep. Rob Flynn did vocals, Andreas Kisser, Dino Cazares, Adam Juice, and Roy Mack. So basically, a completely different band covered Surfacing by Slipknot. But they did The Rich Man.
I don't know what the decisions were, and I've not seen it, so I can't comment on it. I've not seen or heard it.
Sorry, what I was going to say there was they did The Rich Man, and Corey is on the vocals for The Rich Man. He's also on Bother by Stone Sour. So Corey was there that night and didn't do the Slipknot song for the night. It's all a bit weird. So it's just a mashup of artists from those bands, as well as, for the most part, the guys mentioned from the All-Star sessions.
Mm-hmm. See that I talked about earlier there about how it could have been a compilation album. I'm looking at a track list here for a compilation album. Why didn't you just release that?
I don't know, 17 years later, I can say this is a far greater achievement than a compilation album.
Fair enough. It's got more to it, I guess. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot more effort. It was high effort, and it didn't. I was trying to think of did it bring attention to some people, but it didn't need to. These were all very well established musicians. It didn't suddenly make some sort of hero or people go oh, I've never heard this band before, and go to them. Everyone knew who this band, the people were involved in this album. So I just feel like it's really strange to me why it was performed in 2005 and released in 2008. That I would love to know more about why that is, but I can't see any story about that, unfortunately.
So on the Kerrang article I sort of read on this, so I think it's Dino. Yeah, Dino talks about how he didn't think it was going to happen. He was thinking they would get 2 songs, and quote, I went there expecting to do 2 songs and everybody kept bailing out of some, like the Slipknot stuff. Because of the rapping, you need a certain ability to do that, and I ended up with more and more, explains Rob. Sorry, so that's Rob. Blah, blah, blah. And talks about how it was open bar, it was a great gig, blah, 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 they had fun. So there's just that line that says to me, everyone kept on bailing out like the Slipknot stuff. Bailing out to me is people not turning up, people not wanting to do it, people saying they're going to do it and bailing on it. So he just kept on getting more and more, and he does do vocals on the Slipknot song. So, was there sort of tensions around the gig, whatever happened on the night happened, but there was an aftermath to that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a flash in the pan for me in 2005. It's just been another flash in the pan for 2022. Sorry, nothing more I can really add.
That I suppose at the end of the day, I'm a bit saddened by that you maybe didn't see a little bit more of this. But hey, man, that's cool. We're not here to convince each other of other things. So I was genuinely surprised at how much I enjoyed coming back to this. It's not going to make me all of a sudden put this into an annual rotation or whatever. That's not the place I'm at. I had fun with it now. I had fun with it then. I think it's cool that this thing exists. So well done, Roadrunner United.
Good on you. So are we going into our segment? Our one segment.
What are you listening to?
What are you listening to?
This week, I have been listening to a couple of new tracks that got released on the old Spotify. We had a shared moment there, the Veil of Maya track.
Weird one, that.
Bit of a strange one. Really odd title. No denying
Agreed.
that. synthwave V.
And I made the point to you. Sorry, we've mentioned Veil of Maya a few times now on the pod. And I made the point to you, where have these guys been since 2019? They've been releasing singles since 2000. I think there's been, 4 or 5 singles since 2019? And I'm just waiting for this album to drop.
I've no idea what their game is. They clearly are releasing songs drip by drip. I am not expecting a Spirit Box style thing where they're going to... All these tracks have been releasing over the last 4 years now, basically, to be on the next album. I think they are standalone singles that they've just made to have them out there, and I don't think you're going to get an album until 20. You might get an album this year, maybe now. That might be the start of it. This could well be the beginning of them actually releasing it. I think the pandemic has a lot to answer for some of these bands.
No doubt.
A case in point was Trivium releasing 2 albums in the space of 2 years. And it's difficult to listen to because there's so much, and there's very likely some bands I think have just sat on their music until they can tour with it, until they can actually promote it properly in a way that they want to. So it was a good song. It was a nice surprise to hear that. I also heard a new song by a band called Static Dress. They're a UK band, a very young band, but they sound to me like they're very similar to like The Used or Census Fail. They've captured the sound of mid 2000s sort of pop punk and brought it into this decade. And I would highly recommend them to anyone. Have a listen to them. They've got some great catchy songs, very sort of a little bit dark, really fun to listen to. So they had a new track called Flea House, which I enjoyed listening to as well.
Pop punk, nice one, man. Cool.
How about yourself? What have you listened to?
Roadrunner United, because it's an hour and 17 minutes long. No, I'm not going to lie, that has taken up a lot of my listening time. I did some stuff outside recently. So, in case that's ambiguous, I cut the grass.
Hey.
So, I got in a few plays of Roadrunner United. I even went back to a little bit of Dream Theater, a little bit of Sizzle there, a little bit of Dream Theater coming at you. What? Can't wait. But the one thing I suppose I really want to talk about is I watched Metal Lords on Netflix. So are you aware of this?
I've not heard of it until you mentioned it in the group chat this morning, so I'm into it. I want to see it.
It is, and it hits so close to home, especially when we're doing this and we went back and listened to Roadrunner United. So Metal Lords, a film on Netflix. It's written by DB Wise, who was one half of the production team behind what ended up being an absolute bin fire called Game of Thrones. I'm still mad about that.
Don't. I'm also mad about the last 3 seasons of Game of Thrones.
So DB Wise wrote and produced, and it was directed by Peter Sollett. But it's basically about these teenage kids in high school starting to express themselves musically. One kid is the metalhead, and he wants to start a band. He wants to get his friend in to play drums. It's the search for their bass player. There's a female. I'm trying not to give too much away. Slight spoilers for Metal Lords, I suppose. There's a new girl in the school who's a bit, air quotes, weird. Actually played by a Scottish actress, and who does a Scottish accent, called Isis Hainsworth. So that was pretty cool, just to have this person from Edinburgh on this metal American film. And it was just a lot of fun. It really hit close to home about, so 2004 was in my first band. 2005 I went back to my high school and played one of the guys in the year below me. Steve Kyle, how you doing? I don't think he did the school talent show. I think he did a school rock show for a charity event. And he asked us, he knew me and he knew the band I was in, so he asked us to come back and do that. and like it just all sort of. I also did the school talent show in like fucking 2002, 2003, whatever. But like it all just brought that back to me, and like how desperate you are to be, like how you're seeking that approval, or you're seeking that want to be seen as this person of like, and how you like express yourself through metal and stuff like that. Like fucking hell, I was spewing nostalgia through this. The soundtrack is great. It doesn't get amazing reviews, but I loved the hell out of it. So definitely, if you're a 30-something listening to this podcast, go check out Metal Lords on Netflix, because I had a lot of fun with it, and the whole way through I was like cringing and laughing, and my wife was like, was that you? Did you do that in high school? And I'm like, close enough, mate. Close enough.
I'll give it a watch. I'll definitely get it on the watch list, because it sounds like right up my street. Wonderful.
Totally, man. Can't recommend it enough. I suppose it's we talked about the film that I still haven't seen, about the Norwegian band where they end up, like, does the guitarist end up like killing the singer or something?
Oh, Lords of Chaos.
Lords of Chaos.
I've watched that a couple of times. It's a biopic about the Norwegian black metal scene and the formation of the band that escapes my name, and there's going to be people listening to this episode right now that are going to be screaming at their phones as they listen to it. Mayhem, and it's about the death of the singer, the original singer from that band, and how the person who ends up I'm trying. If you know the story, if you know the story of Varkness, how he joined the band, and the relations that they have, I would strongly recommend watching it. It's a very entertaining watch, and it made me laugh. It makes you laugh. It makes you kind of cringe in some points, because there's a few bits of it that are like, wow. The death of, his name was Death. The death of Death is fucking brutal, like uncensored, brains on the wall, and it's a picture of him dead that they put on his as their album cover.
Oh Jesus! Metal Lords is not that. Metal Lords is very much a PG safe song. I mean, there's one scene, if you watch it, there's one scene, especially, you will appreciate this, I appreciate this as being Scottish. I just lost my shit, and it was just so funny. So I suppose it's that added value for me that like they have kept the Scottish actress in it. So yeah, I've obviously ranted about this enough, but I want to see that film that we were just talking about, Mayhem and stuff. But Metal Lords, way more fun, way more chill. Really, if you were ever in school trying to make a metal band, you're definitely gonna remember some stuff from this. They really hit the nail on the head with it.
Cool. I can't wait to watch it. Cannot wait.
Cool. Are we all good? Are we all? You didn't like Roadrunner? I did.
Yeah,
Are we all good to go home?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to a different album this week.
Right. On that note, what will we be listening to next week, Lav?
2005, still in there. I mentioned Adam D already. Parkway Drive, Kill 'Em With a Smile.
All right. Cool.
I can get the rowboats on, boys. And the last time I listened to this, I discovered that the sound bites that are used in a couple of songs are not on the versions that are on Spotify. I might be wrong. They might have put them back. They might not be there. I thought I was imagining it, and I've had to find the MP3 files. And my MP3s do have those sound bites in. So that's something that's interesting that I would love to know more about.
You've mentioned that before, and I totally thought you were then talking about Poison the Well when, they've got the Marlon Brando bit, but you were talking about Parkway Drive.
Yep, I've brought this up. So this was is this their debut album? Yeah, this is their debut album. Absolutely this band, balls to the wall, one of my favourite metalcore bands of the mid 2000s.
They've got
And
a
this is where
2004
it's-
release.
I think it was just was it a demo or a
14 songs.
Don't Close Your Eyes? It's an EP apparently. Aye, I'm looking forward to talking about Killing with a Smile.
Cool. Can't wait.
But yeah, I'll talk about that next week.
Cool.
So Keith, do you want to take us home?
I will. Thank you for listening. This has been Alive or Just Blethering. If you do want to join in the conversation, hit us up at AOGB Podcast on Instagram or Twitter, aogbpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send us an email for anything more than 120 characters or whatever the fuck Twitter is these days. If you're checking us out on Instagram and you're seeing that the reels are a bit fucked, we know, and we don't know how to fix that. I've put in a report to Instagram. It's really super annoying. I think it's killing our reach as well. So we do apologise for the shit reels, but we're trying to work with Instagram and to figure out what is going on there. However, next week on Alive or Just Blethering, Lav will be taking us through Killing with a Smile by Parkway Drive.
Can't wait.
Good night.